Welcome to Walking Tour France, a podcast dedicated to bringing you a new adventure somewhere in France with every episode. Each week, we'll travel to a different destination, from ancient ruins and stunning gardens to fascinating cities, historic landmarks, and hidden gems tucked away across this incredible country. If you're gearing up for your own trip, head over to northstartravelers.com, where you'll find gear recommendations to help you travel smarter, plus a full list of our other podcast shows covering destinations around the world. If you love discovering new places and planning your next adventure, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leaving a positive review goes a long way in helping others find it. Now let's explore France. You are standing on the Boulevard du Roi René in the sun-drenched town of Tarascon, in the heart of the Provence region of southern France. And even before you've crossed through the entrance, what rises before you is nothing short of astonishing. A massive, pale limestone fortress climbs 45 meters straight out of the rocky riverbank, its walls so perfectly vertical, so uncompromisingly solid, that it looks less like something built and more like something that simply grew from the earth itself. This is the Château de Tarascon, and it is one of the finest, best-preserved medieval castles not just in France, but in all of Europe. Take a moment before you go in, stand back on the riverbank and look at it whole. The castle rises in two great parts. To your left, the lower outer courtyard, where commoners, staff, and soldiers once lived and worked, and ahead and to the south, the towering seigneurial residence, the private domain of princes, flanked on the riverside by two square towers and on the city side by two round ones. The walls are 4 meters thick in places. There are no windows on the river facade, only narrow arrow slits that let in almost no light and gave almost nothing away to approaching enemies. From the water, this fortress was a warning. From the town, it was a statement of power. Across the river, you can see the ruins of another castle, the Château de Beaucaire on the far bank, in what was then the Kingdom of France. The Rhône between them was not just a river, it was a political border. This fortress was built to say, here ends Provence, and here it will stay. Now let's cross the bridge. The bridge you walk across today replaced what was once a drawbridge, one of the castle's first lines of defense. The moat beneath you was another. As you enter the lower courtyard, the atmosphere shifts. You're no longer in the town, you're inside a world that functioned entirely on its own, with its own hierarchy, its own rhythms, its own smells of horses and cooking fires. The lower courtyard served the practical needs of the castle: stabling, storage, housing for guards and servants. Today, it contains something unexpected and rather wonderful: the preserved apothecary of the old hospital of Tarascon. Inside a beautiful 18th century paneled library, you'll find an exceptional collection of ceramic pharmacy pots, ewers, and urns, glazed and painted vessels that once held tinctures, powders, and remedies. They line the shelves in neat rows, and they're extraordinarily beautiful. It's worth a quiet look before you head deeper into the castle. Think about what it meant to care for the sick and wounded in a place like this. What knowledge, what skill, what faith that would have required. From the lower courtyard, make your way into the main residence through the gateway ahead. The construction of this castle began in the autumn of 1400, ordered by Louis II, Duke of Anjou and Count of Provence, and his wife Yolande of Aragon. They started on the riverside, the most militarily exposed flank, and that section was finished by around 1411. Work continued under Louis's son and was completed in 1449 by a man whose presence you will feel in every room of this place, René I, Count of Provence and Duke of Anjou, whom history remembers simply as Good King René. It is his castle, really. He is the soul of it. As you step into the main courtyard, the Cour d'Honneur, you feel something release. Out here, facing the austere exterior of the castle, nothing prepared you for this. The inner courtyard is elegant, gracious, almost refined. Gothic arches line the walls, their ribbed vaults resting on sculpted stone consoles carved with chimeras, eagles, bats, and other fantastic creatures. The contrast with the brutal exterior is intentional and deliberate. This is a palace, not just a fortress. The building wears two faces, one for enemies, one for guests. Look at the south facade of the courtyard. High up, you'll see a niche. It's empty now, but it once held busts of Good King René and his wife Jeanne de Laval. He had them placed there himself, a kind of domestic intimacy in a world otherwise defined by power and war. On the ground floor, you can see the magnificent staircase. 19 windows follow its spiral upward, flooding it with light, a beautiful architectural touch in what could so easily have been a gloomy fortress. Good King René is a figure worth pausing over because he was quite unlike the rulers of his age. He held more titles than perhaps any man in Europe: King of Naples, Sicily, and Jerusalem, Duke of Anjou, Bar, and Lorraine, Count of Provence. He lost nearly all of his territorial ambitions in battle and imprisonment, but rather than retreating into bitterness, he turned toward beauty. He wrote poetry, he painted, he played music, he commissioned tournaments and pageants at this very castle, elaborate courtly spectacles that filled these courtyards with color and noise and celebration. He hosted diplomats and artists, he planted gardens. Under his patronage, Tarascon became a cultural center of Provence, a place where the worlds of Gothic severity and Renaissance elegance met and briefly, gloriously merged. During his many stays here, good King René also institutionalized one of the most beloved festivals in Provence, the Fête de la Tarasque, an Easter procession honoring the legend of Saint Martha. We'll come back to that legend, but first, let's climb. Follow the staircase up through the 3 floors of the residence. The rooms up here are largely unfurnished. The original contents were dispersed long ago. But don't let that diminish what you're seeing. The architecture speaks for itself. Many of the rooms have what are called French-style ceilings. Heavy timber beams and the painted wooden boards placed diagonally between the joists are called cloisoirs, and they are extraordinary. Look at them carefully. They're painted with animals, both real and imaginary, scenes of everyday medieval life, and here and there transgressive or humorous scenes that give you a glimpse of the wit and earthiness that coexisted with the courtly refinement. Other rooms have soaring vaulted ceilings with crossed ribs, their stone ribs meeting in sculpted bosses overhead. The west wing, overlooking the Rhône, holds the great reception and banquet rooms. These would have been the most luxurious spaces in the castle: warm firelight, tapestries hung against the stone, the sound of lutes and voices. From the large windows, you could look down onto the river and watch the boats pass on the water that was, for the better part of a century, the edge of the world as Provence knew it. As you move from room to room, something else begins to pull your attention. Faint at first, then undeniable. The walls are covered in marks, hundreds of them: letters, names, dates, ships in full sail, religious symbols, small prayers, portraits, geometric patterns. This is the prisoner's graffiti, and it covers nearly every room in the castle. The story of how this place became a prison is worth knowing. After René's death in 1480, Provence passed to France, and the castle lost its strategic importance as a royal residence. It was pressed into use as a place of incarceration, first selectively, then more systematically from the mid-17th century onward, and formally as a state prison from the 18th century until 1926. Prisoners of war, political detainees, soldiers, sailors, all of them confined here, sometimes for years, in rooms that had once hosted banquets and celebrations. The earliest known graffiti dates to 1480, the very year the castle changed hands. A Catalan prisoner, a supporter of the King of Aragon and an enemy of good King René, was locked in 2 of the lower dungeons. He carved extraordinary images of warships, merchant vessels, religious symbols, and secular scenes into the stone, detailed, confident, clearly made by someone with a seafarer's eye for rigging and hull. Stand before these carvings, and you feel the weight of captivity, the need to leave a mark, to say, "I was here, I existed." Later prisoners were English and Dutch sailors taken during the wars of the 17th and 18th centuries, and their carvings are among the most accomplished in the castle. Ships in full sail, carefully rendered flags, names carved with the patience of men who had nothing but time. History left their words on the walls. Some of the names are readable still. You can find yourself standing in front of a carved name from the 1700s and feeling, unexpectedly, a kind of connection across 3 centuries. During the French Revolution, the castle served a still darker purpose. Supporters of Robespierre were executed inside its walls. In 1652, it was struck by cannon fire during a conflict called the Fronde, and you can still see the marks of cannonballs on the exterior stonework if you look carefully on your way out. Now make your way up to the top. The terrace is one of the great rewards of this visit. You emerge onto a wide crenellated walkway at the top of the towers, with the sky vast above you and Provence spread out in every direction. To the west, the Rhône moves south toward the sea, wide and green. On the far bank, the ruins of Beaucaire Castle sit quietly. To the east and south, the pale ridges of the Alpilles shimmer in the heat. To the north, the lower hills of the Montagnette roll gently into the distance. Directly below you, the red and ochre rooftops of Tarascon spread out, punctuated by bell towers and the great walls of the church just across the square. This is a good time to think about a practical note. If you're visiting in summer, and you should, the light in Provence in July and August is extraordinary, come early. The castle opens at 9:30 in the morning, and for the first hour or so before the tour groups arrive, you'll have corridors and courtyards nearly to yourself. The evening light on the limestone is also remarkable if you're able to visit closer to closing time. Now come down, cross the square, and step into the church that stands almost at the shadow of the castle's walls. The Collegiate Church of St. Martha, the only church in Europe dedicated to this saint, is one of those places that rewards attention. Its origins go back to the 12th century, though it has been added to continuously since then, accumulating Romanesque, Gothic, and Baroque layers like sediment. What draws pilgrims here and has drawn them for nearly 1,000 years is what lies in the crypt, the tomb of St. Martha herself. According to legend, and legend in Provence tends to have very deep roots, Martha of Bethany, sister of Mary Magdalene and Lazarus, came to this coast from Palestine in the 1st century AD, arriving in the Camargue with a small group of followers to spread the new faith. She traveled inland to Tarascon, where a creature called the Tarasca was terrorizing the people along the river. The Tarasca was, and this description has not been softened by the centuries, a beast with the body of a lion, the shell of a tortoise, the tail of a serpent ending in a scorpion's sting, the claws of a bear, and breath that was said to be lethal. It lived in the water, and it ate people. Martha faced it alone. She approached it, sprinkled it with holy water, wrapped her belt around its neck, and led it meekly into the town, where the townspeople, no longer afraid, killed it. Martha died here and was buried here. When her tomb was discovered in 1187, the church was built above it. The sarcophagus in the crypt is believed to be from the earliest Christian centuries. It draws pilgrims from around the world to this day, and the church itself is filled with 17th century paintings depicting the key moments of her story. Good King René was deeply devoted to this legend. He institutionalized the Fête de la Tarasque, an annual festival celebrating Martha's taming of the beast, which continues to this day every June. You'll see a statue of the Tarasque itself, a wonderfully grotesque creature, near the castle in the Riverside Park. If you're here in June, the festival is not to be missed. Before you leave the area, walk the old medieval streets of Tarascon's historic center. A few minutes from the castle, on the Rue Charles d'Emery, you'll find the Soleado Museum, installed in a handsome 18th century mansion. Soleado is one of Provence's great artisanal traditions, a family business founded here in 1806 that produced the iconic printed cotton fabrics, called Indienne, that became synonymous with Provençal style. The museum holds over 40,000 hand-carved printing blocks, extraordinary patchworks, and fashion pieces. Designers from Christian Lacroix to Gucci have drawn inspiration from these patterns. It's a small museum, but it's unexpectedly moving, a story about craft, identity, and the persistence of beauty in a specific place. Tarascon's Tuesday Market, held just a short walk from the castle in the town center, is one of the finest in the region. If you happen to visit on a Tuesday morning, do not miss it. The stalls overflow with local olives, herbs, chèvre, lavender products, and the kind of honest Provençal abundance that makes you want to pack a picnic immediately. Many visitors miss the market because they timed their arrival to coincide with the castle's opening, but arriving a little early gives you the opportunity to have both. For lunch or dinner, the Bistro La Casita is the kind of place you'd be delighted to stumble across. It sits on a shaded square a short walk from the castle, and the cooking is entirely homemade. Fresh, seasonal, Mediterranean, generous. The beef tataki has earned particular devotion from regulars, and the desserts are genuinely extraordinary. It's a family operation run with care, and the terrace under the plane trees is as Provençal as anything in the region. It's worth knowing that La Caseta is closed on Sundays, so plan accordingly. Across the Rhône, a short walk over one of the bridges, the ruined Château de Beaucaire is worth exploring for a completely different experience. Where Tarascon is immaculate and intact, Beaucaire is romantic and broken, a triangular keep, a Romanesque chapel, and ramparts open to the sky, with views back across the river to the very fortress you've just left. Now let's come back to where we started. Stand again at the base of the castle. Look up at those walls. 600 years ago, there was nothing here but a rocky outcrop, a river, and a political border that needed defending. Within a generation, one of the most magnificent structures in France had risen from that rock, built not just to intimidate, but to astonish. Built by men who understood that power is communicated through beauty as much as through force. The kings and dukes who commissioned it are long gone. The prisoners who carved their names into the walls have been forgotten by history, though not by these stones. The festivals that good King René invented still fill these streets with noise and color every June. The river still flows, the light is still extraordinary. And this castle, against all odds, through wars and revolutions and centuries of neglect and conversion and restoration, still stands exactly as it was. There is something here that resists time, something worth noticing before you go. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Before you go, a few quick things. Subscribe so you never miss a destination, leave us a positive review to help others find the show, and share this episode with someone who loves exploring France. And if you're hungry for more adventures beyond France, visit northstartravelers.com to explore our other podcast shows and browse gear recommendations for wherever your next journey takes you. Your support means the world and keeps these adventures coming. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next walk.